Hi, everyone, and happy Pride Month. Thank you so much for tuning in with Tune In with Boone. I am here today with a very special guest for Pride Month. Please welcome, with your hands in your own home as you watch this, the founder of Queer Vox and voiceover extraordinaire, JP Karliak. How are you, JP?
Hello. It's so nice to be here. It's so nice to chat with you.
Thank you so much for taking the time. It is an absolute pleasure. And I thank you from, just the perspective of a member of the LGBT community and as a voice actor. We have a lot to thank you for. And we're going to talk all about it. But before I get into Queer Vox, I want to just introduce the people to you. So if you could tell me a little bit about how you got started in the industry, just, and just about your, just a basic little thing about you, whatever you want to share, and what led you here.
Yeah. Excuse me. I have a touch of a cold. My
Hope you're
apologies,
feeling
fans.
better.
Um, so yeah, I um I decided that I wanted to do voiceover fairly, I don't want to say late, but I always loved cartoons. I grew up adoring cartoons, watching them like crazy, but I reached the age of an awareness of career paths at the same time that the movie Aladdin came out.
Ah,
So as even though I had already loved cartoons up until that point, in the when my brain started to form around like, oh, you're going to need a job one day, watched Aladdin, heard Robin Williams, and started to put the formula that I put together was like, okay, so Robin Williams does this voice. Robin Williams is famous. Ergo, I need to be famous to do voiceover.
right.
And I really held on to that notion well up and through. I was sheltered. I was a very sheltered child. I held on to that well into my college application process and eventually going to college, just being like, okay, I'm going to be an on camera actor, and hopefully they let me do voiceover at some point. Um, so it wasn't until I was in college and had some friends that were was studying animation and were doing student films and stuff like that. They knew I did stupid voices, and they were just like, oh, hey, do you mind just doing some voices for my project? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. And their fellow classmates really started to respond to what I did. Their professors responded to what I did. I was like, oh, maybe I don't need to wait and do the fame thing first. And I had a teacher. I went to USC, and I had a teacher there who taught musical theater, Kelly Ward, who, in addition to teaching musical theater, also directed animated series and movies and stuff like that. And I talked to him, and he sort of put me on the path of like, I need you to study with this person, this person, this person, this person. One of the people I studied with was Bob Bergen, aka Porky Pig, who has mentored a great many wonderful people.
Yep. Fantastic
And
teacher for all those looking.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
So is
And
JP.
thank you.
you're
Well, I mean, honestly, a lot of the stuff that I teach, I pulled in part from him.
you're passing it down. Yes, for
Yeah,
sure. Beautiful.
and yeah. So Bob, helped me connect to my first agent, and then I was sort of off and running, and I was still doing on camera for a minute, but I just slowly started to realize that I was really getting pigeonholed and typecast with on camera, as often happens. While voiceover, I had a ton of opportunity in a variety of different characters, and I just started gravitating more and more that way until eventually that was all that I did.
That's pretty freaking fantastic. I'm curious, did you have any inkling that you wanted to be an actor and performer before you saw Aladdin, or was that your like wake up moment?
Oh, I mean, certainly I
Okay.
was interested in. Well, I'm not going to say that was the wake up moment, but I went through a couple different career paths as a kid. Like I wanted to be an orchestra conductor at one point.
That's cool.
I wanted to be a cartoonist. Um, yeah, I went through a few different sort of iterations until I think the big thing is I did like a children's theater production of Pinocchio, and I was like, this, yes, all the time.
Yes. That's
Yes.
fabulous. That's fantastic. Thank you for that lovely intro. It's a really cool story. Um,
Sure.
now what led to Queer Vox? How, what, why? Give me the whole spiel. How did it
Sure.
start? How did it begin? Who's
um,
involved? What's going on?
yeah. So Queer Vox started sort of at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, because we were all a little occupied and
Yeah.
nothing to do. And I was having conversations with casting friends and we were simultaneously celebrating the fact that there was a rise in queer characters in animation and video games, but there still didn't seem to be the authentic casting to go with them. They were still played by a lot of cis and straight humans, um, and the common refrain seemed to be, "I just don't know where to find them." And it's like, well, it's not that trans actors don't exist. It's just a matter of creating the resources to connect them to these opportunities. So my initial thinking was, okay, what if I offered a pay what you can class where I just, and I enlisted the help of my dear friend Sarah Elmale to co-teach with me.
Fabulous. Yes.
Um, where I would teach animation, she would teach video games, and we would kind of just impart the generalities of that, because my initial thought, honestly, not having um, a big network of queer voiceover friends myself, I was making a lot of assumptions about what the queer voiceover community was like. And my thought was, maybe one of the reasons that casting can't find them is that up until very recently, a lot of queer people probably started to see themselves on film or on television, like on camera work or on stage, but not necessarily in voiceover. So it was just like, well, that doesn't feel like a viable career path, so I'm not going to do that.
Right.
And so I was like, well, maybe it's about reaching out to people who are doing on camera and stage and just giving them that bit of voiceover training to make the transition into that work. What I discovered was that there is a robust queer voiceover community, and it just has a lot to do with that. So many of them haven't been able to bridge the opportunity to mainstream union work,
Yeah.
which is what Sarah and I have been in for quite some time. Um, I've been doing this gig for almost 20 years. So um, I have my awareness at the time. I didn't have a lot of awareness of non-union work and what that was all about.
Right.
And so it was interesting in starting Queer Vox to start to learn, like, oh, okay, this is where people are getting work. This is what the anime community is all about. Again, I had started doing anime, but only like the Netflix stuff where that, is union work.
Right.
So yeah, so it was a huge learning curve for me at the very beginning, not only getting introduced to the queer voiceover community and what their needs are and what they're all about, but also just non-union and a lot of aspects of even audiobooks. Like, it's something that I've never done. And learning about like all of these people that are doing audiobooks, and oh, how can we serve them as well and create those opportunities. So yeah, so it started out as a class, and then over time we added a directory, an online talent directory, and started liaising with casting and doing industry work, some equity and diversity work within studios to try and help them get up to date on terminology and how best to do casting and all of that. And it's kind of snowballed,
Yeah.
into this. We
Sure
have this
has.
big Discord community, and um, yeah, we just keep trying new things to see it to all in service of creating these opportunities, both employment and networking opportunities and educational opportunities
Yeah.
for queer and trans VO actors, while at the same time reaching out to industry and trying to educate them and bring them up to speed for all of it. So yeah,
So wonderful.
it's been quite a journey. It's been really
So
fun.
wonderful. And because you mentioned the Discord, I have to ask, how can people get involved? How can they join the Discord? How can they become involved in the Queer Vox community?
I mean, the easiest way right now is just to go onto our website, queervox.org, and
Queervox.org.
there's a little form at the bottom. Just fill it out, and you'll automatically get an invite to the
Perfect.
Discord.
And I will make
Yeah.
sure to link all that stuff for the people on the YouTube video that this goes to, so you'll all be able to see it if you want to check it out. That's fabulous. I am curious because it's been so I guess it's been what about are we coming up now on 3 years of Queer Vox? Is that
Oh, oh
I think we
Lord.
might be.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Well, that's
Hmm.
that's wow.
We're
Okay.
2.5. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
2.5, something like that. So I'm curious how you've seen queer representation evolve or change over time since you started in the industry, specifically. Um,
Oh,
yeah, not going way
okay.
back. I mean,
I
I
was going to
I
say
know
over the past two
we can
decades.
get more into, what
Yeah.
Queer Vox has been about for sure, but just since you got in to now that Queer Vox is alive and thriving, what are the biggest changes you've seen, or are there certain things that you've expected to see and haven't? What has the change look like to you? I'm certainly there's been some, but I'm
Yeah.
curious about your perspective.
I mean, it's interesting because I'm kind of on the, as a Zennial, I'm kind of on the cusp of old guard and new generation of voice actors,
Right,
especially the queer ones. And there's a lot of queer voice actors of us who are might one might consider the old guard,
right,
who got into this business because it was an area they could disappear into and not have their at home life in quotes questioned. Um, and predominantly that we're talking about like gay white men.
right.
Um, and I get that, and I think there is certainly value in being able to create a career where it's like I want anonymity. I don't want people. People can enjoy my voice, but they don't need to know anything else about me. It's that wonder. You can be doing huge projects, but as a voice actor, you could still go to Trader Joe's and nobody's going to know who the heck you are.
Right.
It's fine. Um, so there is that. And there's also that aspect of being able to play a whole slew of different things, and the excitement of that, and not being pigeonholed like I felt I was at the beginning into queer roles. Like, all of the stuff that I was going out for was very, and of course this is a very like late 90s early 2000s, mid 2000s sensibility of like, hey Mary, what's up? It was a lot of that.
Yeah,
And I can play that, and I do, and I enjoy it, but I also can do other things. And voiceover does offer that freedom to be able to do a whole bunch of different things. I think where the old guard and this new generation butt heads a little bit, and I find myself, especially as the lead of this organization, kind of in the middle of it, is that in this we are in the post I can play anything uh, era,
right.
where authenticity really is the name of the game, as well it should be. And I think trying to communicate to people that on one hand can totally value the talent that you bring to the table and the variety of voices that you bring to the table, while also holding sacred certain identities for the people who identify that way, not because you can or can't you do or don't have the talent to be able to play that, but because it is about having the playing field where everybody has the opportunity to be involved. And there's a whole slew of people that just haven't had the opportunity to even break into this industry, playing themselves, let alone the variety that so many of us gay white gay white cis voice actors enjoy.
Yeah,
So yeah, so I think in short that's sort of the change, at least from the actor side. As far as the industry, like, there were no queer character. There was queer coded character. I mean, God, there's been
right.
Disney
Yes.
villains,
Let's
time
go
out of
back a long
mind. But
time.
yeah, there's plenty of queer coding, but there wasn't any. And the funny thing is that there was plenty of queer coding, but the majority of the queer coded characters were usually played by the straight men.
Yeah,
So there was all of that disconnect as well. And it's only been in the past few years that we've really started to see the turn of, racial, gender, and excuse me, and sexuality authenticity on
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And because you touched on it a little bit, but I want to give you the podium to fully speak to the importance of authentic casting, not just for LGBT actors, but in general, for whether it be racially or in terms of sexuality or physical or mental ability, whatever it is. Because I have heard you speak to this before very eloquently, and as you I'm sure are well aware, there are a lot of people, be it actors or whomever, who don't necessarily understand the importance or don't agree with the importance. And I would love to hear your pitch.
Yeah, it's um you said eloquently, and now I feel like I really need to
No pressure.
I really need to sell this. No, it's I think so much of the pushback that I get is the talent issue. I'm an actor. I trained to be an actor to be able to play anything that I want, and I mean, there was Richard Dreyfuss, bless him, was recently interviewed, and it was just crapping all over authentic casting, saying like, "Are you
Mm.
telling me that I shouldn't be allowed to play Othello?" It's like, yes,
Uh,
we are saying that,
uh-oh.
and yeah, whee! But the reason it's like, okay, is it possible for you to use your research and your intuition and all of those actorly skills to get into the mindset of somebody that does not have your identity, and be able to portray them? Yes. And I'm certainly not the person that's going to there are plenty of queer portrayals that I have seen cis people or straight people do that I've enjoyed. I mean,
Right.
Robin Williams in The Birdcage, like, since we're on a Robin Williams
Well,
tear,
yeah,
like,
he's a great person to mention.
yeah, I
He's
mean, it's
fabulous.
a beautiful and sensitive portrayal. And
Yeah.
I don't want to crap on that because it's not about the talent thing, at least from the perspective I have. It
Right.
really has more to do about the opportunities not being afforded to queer and trans people to begin with.
Yeah.
It is, there are auditions, and Queer Vox commented about some last year. There have been auditions that have gone out, and people that for queer or trans characters that don't even end up in the inbox
Yeah.
of trans
They
people.
don't reach them and they don't even get to read for it, right?
Yeah. So, and then there's just that excuse of like, oh my God, we were in a rush and we just couldn't find anybody. I don't know what you want me to do. And it's like, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
your job.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, because I feel that, look, if we get to the point where everybody has that equal opportunity to get these roles, to break into the industry. And I truly mean equal opportunity in the sense that a casting director can get a demo from for example, transhuman of color, and not just think of like, oh, okay, well, this is a trans person of color, and I need
Right.
to consider them only for those roles, if there are those roles, if I think to think of them. If it's more like, oh, I'm just listening to the voice alone and I'm hearing the possibilities, both trans and of color, but
Yeah.
also white and cis and all sorts of things. What in the same way that they used to consider white people, the white straight cis people, for all of those opportunities as well.
Right.
Some casting director, or at least I think, listened to the voice of who is it, Mike Henry or something like that. I
I'm
think
not
that was
sure.
his name. Is his name, and was like, he should play Cleveland on Family Guy.
Oh,
Yes,
right. Oh, yeah.
yes,
Right.
that's who it should be. It should be him. Somebody thought that. And so if casting has the creativity to be able to think of all of the wonderful opportunities and characters that white cis straight people can play, surely they can do the same for our
Yes.
community as well. And when that time arrives, well, then sure, we can play whatever the heck we want. Who cares? But we're not there yet. And what I find most frustrating is that studios, video games and animation and live action alike, are capitalizing off of telling queer stories, but not allowing us to earn wealth telling them with them. It's
Yeah.
like other people
Yep.
are making that money off of our stories.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not okay. And if there's anything that we might have picked up from this particular Pride Month, it is that companies like to make money off of the queer community, but they are not our allies until they do the hard work.
Right. Yeah.
And part of that hard work is doing the research and allotting the time and the resources and money to fill your cast, fill your writer's room, fill your executive suite with people who can speak to the varied and diverse experience set.
Well,
So
that's fabulous because I was going to ask you what you would recommend to people who are casting directors, producers, people in positions of authority who can hire or agents as well. Um, what they can do if they feel, oh wow, I really believe in this cause. I really believe in this revolution, this change. I don't know what I can do at my post. You kind of just answered it with filling the room. But I don't know if you have anything specific because I have heard personally multiple casting directors who say they care about this and they want to help make things better for the landscape and they don't know where to start and they just feel overwhelmed. And I
yeah.
think that can happen to a lot of people.
Well, for starters, we are, I mean, not to do the plug, but we're a nonprofit, so I'm allowed to plug.
You can please plug.
Yeah, we are a resource, and we have done equity and diversity seminars, panels, discussions, private Zoom conversations, with casting, departments, developers, to really even just give them the base primer of like, here's some terminology you need to know.
Right.
Here's the right way to use it. Here's the wrong way to use it. Here's what a breakdown should look like or shouldn't look like. Um, Things to consider when you're approaching an actor of a particular identity, blah, blah, blah. You know, the real basic stuff and being the resource to be, to answer the quote unquote stupid, there are no stupid questions, but there are questions that a lot of people feel embarrassed to ask
Yes,
because they
absolutely.
don't want to offend. They don't want to, it's like, look, we're here to ask the quote, the offend, the thing, a question you feel is offensive. First of all, it might not be. Maybe your phrasing of it might be, but like we're not going to take offense to it because we understand if you're asking us the question, you want like you're here to do the work.
Yes.
Great, let's do the work together. That's the most important thing. We're not here to grammar check you. So that's part of it. But I think in addition to reaching out to us and using us as a resource, there are plenty of others. GLAD is a fantastic resource as well
Yep.
in this work. But I would also say just start to just um, go on queer organization websites like GLAD, like PFLAG, like Trevor Project, because they all have guides of terminology that you can use to just get a primer of things you should know. Um, and also get in the habit of challenging, if you are a casting director or an agent, get in the habit of challenging the person you're talking to. If you're an agent, the casting director you're talking to. If you're a casting director, the showrunner you might be talking to. Get in the habit of asking the question, why? Or for, like, because for two reasons. One, there may be an identity that a show wants to put forward, be like, what would be great? Let's make this person non-binary Latina. Oh, cool. Does it, is it rooted in the story in any way? Do you have the background to be able to write that character, or are you just throwing darts at the identity
Right.
board?
Crossing off a box or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
tokenizing.
Yeah.
Ask why. In the same way that we would also want you to ask, like, okay, the characters, especially your leads, you want this to be a white cis straight male. Does it have to be? Are you open to hearing a voice that might surprise you and be like, we can either A, morph the character to fit the identity of the human that's playing them, or trust that, as we have, as I mentioned before, as we've done for many years, trust that this trans man can play this cis man believably and not bat an eye, opening yourself up to that. We do an exercise in our when we meet with studios where we have them like think of one of your signature characters in your games or a character you've helped develop or in one of your shows, whatever. Think of that character. Now, describe them to us without using any words involving gender.
Right.
Does it does the character somehow become less because you didn't describe them in terms of gender?
Right.
If it becomes an intrinsic thing, then sure. I mean, I'm not saying your character, none of it, just throw gender out the window. No character can have gender. But I am saying, like, encourage yourself to think outside the box of what gender roles characters can have or gender identities characters can have. Sometimes it will feel like it's in the fiber. Like maybe there'll be somebody, it's just like, this feels like just mother, female, maternal energy. I really want this to be a woman. Cool. Nobody's saying you shouldn't. But there may be that character that's like, but this is a character that I feel is sort of overeager, maybe a little anxious, but it has a really good heart and is kind of an adventurer. That could be
Yeah.
anybody. So
Yeah.
let's hear the possibilities and let yourself be surprised by the voice that really embodies that without the additional identifiers underneath it. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think those are our starting points. In the same way that I say, if we're thinking about especially when we're talking about Walla or additional voices in games or stuff like that, where there's a crowd of people. It's like if you think of a crowd of people, are the first people that you think of white, cis, straight people? Is that what the crowd looks like when you go to the mall? Now, maybe
Right.
if you're in the Midwest, it could be,
Right.
but like,
Exactly. Depends on where you live,
but
but yeah.
yeah, and who goes to the mall anymore? There are no
Right.
malls.
I don't.
Yeah, I'm a Zennial again, and we lived at the mall.
I
But
understand.
Um, but yeah, like thinking about what reality actually looks like and encouraging yourself to start from a different point of the map and spreading out from there as opposed to always starting from white, cis, straight, male, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
then moving out there to find color.
That's
Um,
fabulous. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
and oftentimes, it is moving out to find color is a great way to put it because we see a lot of the side characters, the black friend and the gay friend, and so that's a very very useful tool. If anyone's listening and finds it helpful, if you're in a position, if you're writing something or if you're casting something, there you go. JP has given you some great piece of advice.
good enough.
And before I hand it over you to plug everything and wrap up, I want you to speak to the actor out there who might be listening to this, and they're unsure of how their identity as a queer person fits into their professional life, their potential as an actor. They're newer, they're unsure of if Queer Vox is the right place for them to go. If you can imagine someone who's kind of just in a place of uncertainty with how their identity fits into their professional life as an actor, and they're maybe a little hesitant, especially because they're a member of the LGBT community. Maybe they're afraid of getting pigeonholed, or they're not sure what they can go out for, where they can start. What would you say to those people?
Sure. Um, I'll start with the end first.
Okay.
The concept of being pigeonholed, is it possible? Yeah, of course. It's something that we all face. And um, I find, I do play a variety of characters, though I would say almost every single one of them probably went to a good college and make sure everybody knows it. Like
Right.
they all seem to fit in that zone. But there is always the categorization of people that happens, and it's not a bad thing in the sense that casting needs to be able to do their job where somebody says, hey, can you find me somebody who is plucky and has that sort of thing, like then they can go to that, like, oh yeah, it's this person. I can think of a few people that can fill that.
Yes.
So that does come up, and that's okay, but I encourage people not to get discouraged by that and think of it more in the we talk a lot about at Queer Vox about the sandbox and think about the the sandbox as the variety of different voices that you can play in. And the center of that sandbox, the middle where you put the castle, is your moneymaker voices. They're the ones that you enjoy, you feel euphoric doing, and are also attuned to your voice. And people are mainstream casting and the quote unquote mainstream audience will buy it. It'll be like, yep, sure, sounds like that.
Right.
Yeah, that's the moneymaker. But that doesn't mean that's the place you have to stay. There's also the outer corners of that sandbox that you still can play in, but it might be the voices that you really like. Like let's say it might be, let's say it's somebody who has a particularly light or high or effeminate voice, but really wants to play just like a Viking. You
Right.
know, there's nothing saying that you can't. There's nothing saying that there isn't a Viking that doesn't sound like you. People sound like everything, Real people. It's like one of our board members and teachers, Lindsay Russo, who teaches a military callouts class. Um, Lindsay was in the military, and she talks about how everybody has this idea, especially in video games, that soldiers sound like this. They all have this voice.
Right.
No, they don't. Not in
No.
real life.
No.
High pitched, and that doesn't mean that they're like, oh my gosh, a grenade. Like, they just have higher voices and they're brave as everybody.
Yes.
So giving people that permission that it's like there might not be you might not get every Viking role with that voice, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't talk to your agent or submit, or if you don't have an agent, submit on those doing your best because there may be that thing that hits. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean submit yourself for just everything, but if there's things that really, speak to you, then try for them because every once in a while there might be that thing that just crosses over and makes sense and it might be like, you know what, actually it would be nice to have a Viking that has a different voice in here. Why don't we go with
Yes.
this person?
And that's
Cool.
important for people to know because that stuff does get changed. It does happen, and
Yeah.
people make adjustments for the actors change casting directors' minds all the time.
For sure. And secondly, there are also those voices outside your sandbox that either because of your gender identity or whatever, do not feel good to you to portray, or are just outside of your wheelhouse and you're like, you know what, I have no interest in those. It's good to be able to communicate that as well, because knowing what your strengths and limitations are, being able to communicate that to an agent or casting director makes their job so much easier, especially when some of them are nervous about understanding this because they don't want to offend you. If you're like,
Yeah.
hey, I play this, 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 and this, I do not play this. I know it sounds weird, but I'd really love if you submitted me on these other three things. They're like, cool, I have a shopping list. I know how to do my job now.
Absolutely. And
So,
yeah, please go on.
no, I was just going to say, knowing your voice and knowing your sandbox and being able to communicate that it clears up a lot of issues for people. They're just like, okay, I understand. I can move forward from here
That's
and know where to put you.
fantastic. And Queer Vox can be a fabulous place to start, to exploring and creating, and it's a safe place to be in the sandbox, which is why I will beautifully segue into you plugging anything you have to plug, whether it be about Queer Vox, shows you're in that you're allowed to talk about, or just any messages you want to send to the people out there. It's all yours.
I just want to say hi to my mom. No,
Hi,
well,
JP's
hello.
mom. Hope she's
Yeah.
well.
Um, yeah, no, you said it brilliantly. Queervox is a safe space in I think sometimes we get the misnomer that we are only for trans or non-binary people,
Mm,
people that are specifically just on a gender journey. No, we are here for the entire queer community. All of us have our own little set of issues that, sometimes we need help with, need some training, need to vent about.
yeah,
I think our Discord is a great place sometimes to just
it
vent,
is. Great community. Yeah.
because yeah, to just feel like, okay, I'm going back out there and I'm trying again tomorrow. Hooray!
Yeah.
Yeah, so I encourage everybody to give it a shot. And if you're a company that is interested in learning more about Queer Vox or bringing equity and diversity into your casting, also hit us up on our website as well, and we'd love to speak with you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, JP. Happy Pride Month. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about this. It's close to my heart. I'm obviously love Queer Vox. I've been involved with you guys for quite a while, and I've attended the trainings and all the sorts of stuff, and I can give it my Boone stamp of approval for whatever it's worth to all those who care. Um, I hope you check it out. I'll make sure to link everything in the description that I can find that will be helpful and beneficial. Um, I think that's it. Happy Pride Month. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
I
Boone.
really appreciate it, and break legs out there.
Great chatting with you. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
thank you so much, JP. Have a great night, and I hope your cold is abating.
Thanks.
Yeah, all right.
Bye.
Thank you, Jay. Take care. Bye.